Good evening. I'm very pleased to tell my story of my family and the history of the Jews in Portugal. As you know, Portugal had a dark period of Inquisition from 1536 until 1821. But before the Inquisition was established, the King of Portugal, Manuel I, because of interest in a marriage with a princess from Spain, he expulsed the Jews in 1496. Either they would convert to Catholicism or they had to be expelled from the country. However, he never allowed any Jew to leave the country. And in 1497, the Jews were forbidden to leave the country, and the king converted them collectively to Christianism, to Catholicism, against their will. And he gave 20 years for them to adapt. Therefore, the Jews could not leave the country. I had an ancestor called Mahir Levy, who was born in Lisbon 1465. And in 1510, he succeeded to leave the country because the king would allow the Jews to practice Judaism in the fortresses Portugal had outside Portugal. And Portugal, because of the discoveries in the navigation, had a lot of fortresses in the western coast of Morocco. And one of the fortresses the Portuguese had was in Safi, Morocco. And my ancestor, Mr. Mahir Levy, could go there and practice the Judaism. Therefore, he went there, the king allowed him to go there, practice Judaism there, and he made some trade with the king of Portugal, with several products he would buy from Portugal, the king would buy from Morocco, and he had a very important job in Safi. He was responsible for the ports. However, the king of Morocco, who was an enemy of the Portuguese, one day hanged him.
Wow.
And his son continued to be responsible for the port of Safi. In the meantime, the Portuguese closed the fortress, came back to Portugal, but the grandson of Mahir Levy stayed in Morocco with the Moroccans, and he was again responsible for the port of Safi.
Was he a practicing Jew?
With three generations of my family who were in Safi, the first generations were in Morocco. After that, my family went to Tetuan in Morocco as well, in the north part of Morocco, very close to Gibraltar, and they were Dayanim all the time, generation after generation, because in Morocco the Jews were judged by the Jewish judges, the Muslims by the Muslim, and later on by the colonization countries, Spain or French courts. And they are, some of them are mentioned here in the Ketuvah of my father, of this Dayanim. And in 1710 approximately, the British took possession of Gibraltar with the Treaty of Utrecht, and they had a garrison of 3,000 people, and they needed supplies and all the logistics for these 3,000 people. Therefore, they invited merchants of the region to go to Gibraltar and perform these tasks of supplies to the army. I don't know when, but some members of my family went to Gibraltar, and in 1800 approximately, I have my great-great-grandfather, Moses Levy, who lived in Gibraltar. He was a very rich merchant, and he had a lot of small ships making trade with Brazil, with Holland, with Portugal, and those times there were many pirates, and the pirates was a danger, and he got protection for the British Navy, and he was very friendly with the chief admiral of the British Navy called Lord Jervis. Lord Jervis was a very important man for Portugal. Lord Jervis, by the way, was the boss of Nelson.
Wow.
And he was First Lord of Admiralty. And Portugal, those times, were in war with Napoleon. French troops came to Portugal, and the Portuguese army and the Portuguese Navy were under the command of British officers. Therefore, Lord Jervis was the chief commander of the Portuguese Navy. And he was very friendly with my ancestor Moses Levy. And the King of Portugal, John VI, asks him to invite he suggested the name of my ancestor. The king invited my ancestor to come to Portugal. The name was Moses Levy. In 1807. In fact, when he was traveling in the ship of Lord Jervis, they said, look, the Inquisition is not over officially yet, because only 1821, you need to change your name. He said, I don't change my name. If you don't want me with the name Moses Levy, I go back to Gibraltar, no problem. Therefore, the king had to give a special authorization for him to disembark here with the name Moses Levy.
And he lived in Lisbon?
No, and he came to Lisbon with a brother-in-law called Itzhak Aboab, and he made a company, Levy, Aboab and Company, to make his trades. But he did not stay in Lisbon. He stayed some time, but he went back to Gibraltar. He had a son called Isaac Levy, but as he was a very rich man, he did not want his son to enter the business. He said, you devote yourself to Torah, and you study the Torah, and the business is with me. And my great-grandfather, Isaac Levy, he wrote some books on dinim, and he created a yeshiva in Tetuan. Creating a yeshiva in Tetuan means paying everything. The students were very poor, had to pay everything. Until his father died in 1832, and then he had to go to business. He has many children, and among his children, 2 or 3 of the children came settled in Lisbon. One was my grandfather, called Yeshua Halevi, who was a mixture of a chacham. He was a chacham, but he was a businessman. He wrote 3 books with comments on the Torah and the Bible, with a little accent on Kabbalistic thoughts. The books are there, were published in Jerusalem. My grandfather died in 1896, 120 years ago. He published one of the books, was Lili Shua. The second one was Isa Hashem, because he had a son called Yitzhak, another Shlomo was my father, and Abraham.
And the books are over here?
Here I can show them to you.
Okay.
And then he had another son, Haim, and he made another book called Otsar Haim. But these last 2 books were published after his death. My grandmother published them in 1912 or something like that. The books were republished in Jerusalem in 1994 with a new edition, with another arrangement of the the comments on the Torah. You can see them.
Was it always published in Hebrew or in
Hebrew only.
It wasn't in Portuguese
No,
or
Hebrew. He wrote his books in Hebrew. Another son, called Abram Levy, was the man who laid the first stone of the synagogue, Shaarei Tikva, where you were. But he did not attend the inauguration because he died in the meantime. And there were other brothers who stayed here. The son of this Abram Levy was the first president of the Jewish community of Lisbon. His name was Yitzhak Levy.
and that was your
A cousin. He was a cousin because Abram Levy was my uncle.
and the
Abram Levy was the brother of my grandfather, Joshua Levy.
and when was the first stone laid? When did
If you go to the synagogue, you see Abram Levy,
I saw it today.
Abram E. Levy, Abram Esther Levy.
But he didn't live when they
It's
inaugurated
written in
the
stone
synagogue.
that he was the person who laid the first stone of
And
the synagogue.
the synagogue was opened in 1904.
Well, the synagogue was decided. Well, let me tell you how was the life of the Jews in the 19th century. The church and the state were united, and no Portuguese could be other thing than Catholics. Therefore, the freedom of religion was given to the foreign colonies. Therefore, if the Jews here were British or Spanish or whatever, Moroccan, they could freely
Practice.
exercise their religion. And the synagogues were in apartments. There were many small apartments where they made a minyan and they made the synagogue. They created a cemetery in the 19th century, one of the first things. Another thing where my grandmother was a founder, an association for the poor, Somech Noflim.
Like a Chevra Kadisha.
Excuse me?
Like a Chevra Kadisha.
Not Chevra Kadisha, it was to help the poor people and to give education to the children. So that still exists today, more than 150 years. And Chevra Kadisha was created. The Chevra Kadisha was an association called Gemilut Hasadim. And there was a cemetery that lasted very short time, about 30 years, and then we had to buy another land, a bigger, wider land, where the cemetery exists still today and is still with places. And in 1896 they created Shechita section, and this section of Shechita they decided to build a synagogue. And the synagogue started being built in 2002, in 1902, and in 1904 it was inaugurated. Therefore, I was president of this community in Lisbon from 1999 to 2002. Therefore, I organized the celebration of the 100 years of the first stone. Came the President of the Republic, came the Chief Rabbi of the Spanish and Spanish and Portuguese congregation of London, and in inauguration came the Rabbi of Israel and the President of the Republic again.
Do you remember who the rabbi was who came from Israel?
I don't remember who was Uziel, I don't remember which one. But when I organized the celebration of the stone, we had a choir from Jerusalem. It was beautiful.
The choir?
Yes, a choir. But therefore the community was from 1911 we had a revolution in Portugal, the monarchy disappeared, the church separated from the state, and therefore they made a law where the Jews could practice the religion being Portuguese. Therefore, people could become Portuguese.
This is when it became a republic.
Became a republic. This was the first good thing. Therefore, we had officially a community of Lisbon, and the relation with the government was always good. When Salazar came, it was another revolution in 1926. Salazar, Minister of Finance, and the president of our community was a professor of finance, was friendly with Salazar, helped him, and he was president of the community for more than 50 years. Therefore, when he had problems, he would talk to him and see, even so he never agreed in some points. But the community was 500 people approximately. But when the war came, a lot of people start coming. We had
this was in the 30s,
we
in
had
the Second
people-
World War. The Second World War. When
well, the first, after the First World War, or during the First World War, some Jews came here from Germany, from Poland, from Russia. They started coming. We had, I would say the community was 50-50 Ashkenazi and Sephardic.
okay.
They started coming. Of course, when the war came in before, in the 1930s, 33, a lot of people started coming to Portugal, and we have to organize their support. The policy of Portugal towards the Jews was much better than the Spanish. The Spanish would not allow them to stay there, and the Portuguese allowed the refugees to come under several conditions. One, they could not stay forever. They had to organize his departure. Secondly, they could not have a job, not to take jobs from the Portuguese. Portugal was a poor country. And somebody had to take care of their expenses. If they could not work, somebody had to pay.
It's supportive.
When the Nazis came to invaded Paris, in Paris there was an office of American Joint Distribution Committee, and this they had to go elsewhere, and they came to Portugal, and they asked permission to stay here. It was the president of our community who went to Salazar and discussed with him. He said, yes, okay, they can stay here, but keep them with very low profile. For that reason, the community took at his charge to take care of the refugees, and the money would come from American Joint or ISM or other organizations. And the Jewish community of Lisbon organized the Department of Refugees. They had to deal with the police because in some cases there were problems, and they assured everything to the refugees: housing, health, food, everything. And we have a Jewish hospital in Lisbon where they could go to have the doctors for free, the medicines, everything. There was a director of the hospital. His name was Fortunato Levy, and he's not my family. He would made the surgery without charge. And we had a Yom Kippur, I remember. There were so many people here, about 2,000 or 3,000 people. We had to organize 5 synagogues. The Shaarei Tikva, then there was an Ashkenazi synagogue, and we had to rent some big spaces to make synagogues. And in 1945, when the war was over, there was the ceiling of the synagogue was in wood. It was in a very bad state. We had to remove this roof, and then we decided to make another
To extend it, I saw there's two floors.
And we wanted to enlarge synagogue because we thought during the war it's not enough. Unfortunately, people went away. But you know, there was a very interesting thing when the refugees would come, they had to sign a paper to American Joint or some higher immigration that they would commit themselves to pay back the expenses they had with them if one day they would have enough money. And this happened that most of the people paid back the expenses. It was very nice thing.
I think one of the refugees was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Schneerson. He left from Lisbon to go to New York.
Yes, and the people from who were here to leave the country was very difficult. You didn't have airlines or regular ship lines. Therefore, we had to organize chartering of passenger ships. I remember 2 ships were chartered, Portuguese ships, to bring refugees to the United States in this case, where everything has to be prepared kosher. All the china, everything, the kitchens were completely new. And we had to slaughter 4 or 5 cows for one trip. And Schneerson from the Chabad, the Rav Schneerson, embarked here in one of these ships called Serpa Pinto in 1941. And the Chabad found a vaccination certificate signed by the vice president of the community, Dr. Warwell. It was very interesting. And the refugees who leave the country, first they had to have a visa, which was very, very difficult to get. In the United States gave quotas.
Very small quotas, amount they would allow.
According to the country where they were born. And then first have the visa. Then get a transportation, but the transportation needed something called Navy Cert. Navy Cert was a certificate given by the British Navy to allow them to cross the Atlantic because of U-boats.
It was U-boats, it was dangerous. U-boats.
Therefore, they would only cross with the protection of the British warships all along. And they had to have the Navy Cert. And then they had to have the documents. But the Jews went from here to Palestine, to United States, to Cuba, in those times, to Cuba, to Brazil, to Australia. One day, a man, we asked him, where do you want to go? To Australia. So far away. He said, but far away from whom? I have no family anymore. I am not far from nobody. And he went to Australia. And I don't know if they went to South Africa. That I don't know. During the war, I had an uncle in Johannesburg, who was a broker in the stock exchange, A.J. Levy, and he asked my father that I go to live with him and a sister of mine, because he was afraid that the Germans would come here, and everybody was afraid that the Germans overnight would come here. My father didn't allow me to go, and I did not want to go. I wanted to stay with my family, and fortunately, because my father passed away when the war was finished, therefore it was like that. I had 4 sisters and 1 brother, much older than me, because my oldest sister was 20 years older than me, and my next sister was 10 years older than me.
So there's a big gap.
She passed away, she married a rabbi from Argentina. She passed away in Yerushalayim. I had another sister who passed away in Yerushalayim also, and another sister who had family and children and so on, lived in Haifa. During the war, her husband his name was Joel Sequeira, had a very tough job, saving refugees. He worked in Spain, and Spain was a big problem. The Nazis were there, and my brother-in-law is supposed, we are not sure, but the Yad Vashem has a register of somebody who did it, and we are sure it was him, but they don't know the name. He went to pick up people in Belgium, occupied Belgium, through France to Spain, Portugal. He
Unbelievable.
went personally 10 times.
Unbelievable.
And then he went to Brazil. He worked for the Israel embassy for the bonds. And then finally he went to Haifa. He has a son there. And he died also there. And my sister, 95 years old, died a few years ago in Haifa.
So your family was very Zionistic. It was a very Zionistic family.
Yes. And then I had my eldest sister lived in South Africa with my uncle 5 years until he died. And then she married and she came here. And she passed away in 1986. My brother lived here, passed away in 88.
Can I ask you, the refugees that came during the war, the Shoah, after the Shoah and during the Shoah, did any of them remain in Lisbon?
They were not allowed to remain. They have to leave the country. That was a pity, because people with a lot of...
And there weren't any that
the
got Portuguese
government
citizenship?
allowed them to enter under the condition they have to leave.
And they all did leave?
And all did it. But we had many Jews who came before the war that stayed here.
And they could stay.
Their children are here and so on. Ashkenazim, many Ashkenazim. From Russia, from Germany, from...
And was there ever a conflict between the Sephardi and the Ashkenazi? Was there ever any problems between the Sephardi and the Ashkenazi?
No problems.
People got on very well.
Very well. Well, the community, we have a rabbi here, was from Vienna, and a rabbi from Hebron. One Sephardi, no problem.
From Hebron?
But my brother, when he married my sister-in-law, she's still alive, she's 97 years old.
Yeah.
She was an Ashkenazi. In the family, it was very strange that a Sephardi would marry an Ashkenaz, like a mixed marriage. And unfortunately, my family disappeared from Portugal. No Levies anymore.
Are you the only remaining Levy from your family that lives in...
I am the only Levy here.
Really?
I have a niece. I have a little young cousin, a girl. And that's it.
And can I ask the rabbi of the show that we were...
Isaac Asor.
Yeah, he was for many years the rabbi.
Isaac Asor was a story as the following. We had this rabbi from Hebron, Castel, was a very famous name in Israel, the Castel, and a very noble family from Hebron. He was a shochet. When he died, we wanted to engage a shochet, and we went to Tangiers, and we brought a man called Abraham Asor, was a shochet, a young boy, 20 years old. And he became a Hazan and a shochet. Later on, he studied, made studies, he became a rabbi. He made his exams, and he is the father of Isaac.
And Isaac was the one that was laning and dubbing.
He was a long time here, a rabbi here in Lisbon. He was a very nice man.
About 50 years.
Excuse me?
Around 50 years?
Yes, around 50 years. 42 years, I suppose. And Diesendruck was the other one, was my teacher and so on. He was here 22 years. Then he went to Brazil and he became rabbi of a Lebanese community, the Safra group. He died there, and he had left 2 children there, and another son is in Israel, in Netanya. His name was Diesendruck. He was rabbi by the school of Vienna. He was a big singer and so on.
And Mr. Levy, can I ask, growing up here in Lisbon, you grew up, you were born here, we saw the street that you were actually born in, it's very close to the shul, to the synagogue.
I was president of the Jewish Center when I was 29 years old, and I was president of the community now, as I told you, 14 years ago.
Did you ever experience anti-Semitism growing up?
No. We cannot call it Semitism. It's a special feeling about the Jews that the Inquisition, 300 years, made a job, the reputation of the Jews. Well, all the known things that they attribute to Jews, they like money, they are rich.
It was ingrained.
All these things.
Ingrained.
The general people knows, but people with a certain culture. This last week I had a lunch, a birthday lunch with a friend of mine, and I was sitting next to a man who was a Minister of Education, and he told me, "Look, I'm very curious. I'd like to see how the Jews make Shabbat dinner." And I said, "Okay, I invite you to come to my house and you will see."
And he came?
No, not yet. This was 3 days ago. Yeah, this conversation I had on Friday last, but I have to prepare something to show him how we do it. But people are curious about the Jews.
Can I ask, was there ever a situation where a Portuguese felt that maybe they are descendants of Anusim, that their parents or grandparents were Jewish, and they came to the shul and they said, "We think that we are Jewish and we want to return to our source"?
We have in the shul, I don't know if you have noticed, there was a man there, was sitting behind me. He's Marano from Belmonte.
He was from Belmonte.
He's a full Jew. He has a son who makes yeshiva in Yerushalayim.
Yes, I spoke to him.
He's from Belmonte.
His son lived in Beit Vegan, and now lives.
They were hiding. The Belmonte was very difficult. One day I went to Belmonte in 1967, and I said my name. I'm Jewish, and my name is Samuel Levy, but they did not want to talk to me. They said they gave excuses, polite excuses, and I was talking with them, talking, and the only point when they recognized me as Jew, when I said that in university I was going to lose 1 year because I did not want to write on an exam on Shabbat. Then you are Jew. So of course I'm Jew. With my name Samuel Levy. And the first person who went to them in 1920, it was a mining engineer from Odessa called Samuel Schwartz. One day he was deciding purchasing with a supplier, and you see in the north of Portugal, and the supplier said to him, "Don't buy from that man because he's a Jew." He said, "A Jew? Which Jew? There are Jews here?" And he went to Belmont, and when he arrived to Belmont, they were surprised, "Who is this man doing here?" And to test him, he said, "Shema Israel, Hashem Eloheinu Hashem." When he said the name Hashem, not as I am saying, you are Jewish, because they had their prayers in Portuguese, old Portuguese of the 16th century, but the name Hashem, they said exactly as in Hebrew.
Incredible.
It was fantastic. And then he could be able to write down all the prayers they were having. There are books about that. And if you go to Betat Futsot, you can find films about that. I remember I went one day, I wanted to see videos about Belmonte. Said, if you don't understand Hebrew, all the videos are in Hebrew. Said, no, but I want to see them. And the videos were in Portuguese, but with Hebrew
subtitles. Wow.
Very funny. It was very interesting.
And the shul here in Lisbon, it has a connection with the Belmonte shul, with the community in Belmonte?
No, when I was president of the community, I tried to make a federation of Belmonte, Porto, the Algarve and Lisbon, and made several meetings, but it didn't work. But we have at the level of the board of the community now, they are in touch with the Belmonte. But for example, I went 3 months ago. I went to Belmonte for a seminar they organized with international speakers from everywhere.
For the Anusim?
Jewish lecturers came from the States and organized in Belmonte. And they have many things. They have a Jewish museum there. They have a synagogue was paid by a Moroccan man. They have a rabbi that Shavei Israel pays, I suppose, who is a shochet, and also is shochet for the Lisbon community.
And is there a very good connection between Porto and Belmonte?
Porto?
Yeah.
I don't know exactly the relationship between them. But
Is there a big Jewish community in Porto?
No, there was not. Now I don't know what they are doing. I am not aware what they are doing now.
In the Algarve, there's a...
The Algarve is more informal. There are a group of English or American people retired who live there. They gather for Yom Kippur, they gather for Pesach, they gather for the festivities. It's a kind of community, but it's in a different way, in a vacation place.
And we heard today, before Mariv, that with Chabad, that had just come to Lisbon, that there's a very nice connection with Chabad.
But did you go to...
I haven't been, but we heard from the Chazan that Chabad and the synagogue have a very nice kesher. They got a very good connection.
With Chabad, we have very good connection.
Very good relations.
But Chabad, they have a house, Chabad house, 30 kilometers away from Lisbon, and he invited people to go there, but people are not religious. But I asked him, how it come that you have so many people here? He said, in Sukkot I go in the streets with the lulav. They came immediately to me. Or even, he doesn't need the lulav because he has the coat and the hat black. People see him, are you Jewish? And he organizes social events now. They make a sushi in the sukkah. They made in Purim, they made the party for the children. But he comes also here to Yom Kippur here, the Rabbi Chabad was here. And now the community here engaged two young Chabad boys. One of them is a rabbi, just for staying here 3 months to organize activities.
It's wonderful.
For the youngsters and give a certain... because we have now a new board in the community, and Isaac Assor is vice president for the religion matters. Therefore, he's developing some activity now in this field.
And on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, on the Yomim Noraim, was the synagogue it was full?
Mainly in Kippur. Kippur for the Kal Nidre and for the Ne'ilah. During the day,
yes,
not so much.
But there was space for everybody to come?
Yes. Completely crowded.
And what I noticed amazing about this beautiful...
I would say 300 people maybe.
The synagogue from the outside, from the street, you don't really see that it's a synagogue.
Because we are not allowed to build synagogue in front of the street, because the synagogue was inaugurated during the monarchy. Before the Jews were free to have the non-Catholics could not build.
They couldn't build
temples with the facade for the street. Therefore,
that's why it's built more.
We have to build it this way, which for us also was convenient because it's towards the east, no?
It's towards Yerushalayim, yeah.
But could have being open to the street, but it was not allowed. In 1904, it was not allowed. And when it was built, practically there were no houses around. It was an area was open area.
So Shmuel, can I just mention, with your family, it's the most remarkable story that the king invited your...
But in the case of the family of my mother,
it's incredible.
Was also Portuguese people who was a completely different story. I had an ancestor who was burned by the Inquisition in 1604.
She was burnt.
Yes, he was condemned by the Inquisition. All the family was condemned, and his son, who was my ancestor, he was condemned to, I don't know what you call condemned.
It's autofe. It was
to the boats went to Angola for 3 years, and then he escaped. He went to Hamburg, from Hamburg to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to London. And in London, the family was called Sequeira. They were very active in the organizational community. One of them was one of the founders of Bank of England. And then in 1830, one of them came to Gibraltar, and from Gibraltar he bought a house in Faro. Faro is a city in the Algarve. And then he created a community there. My mother was born in Faro.
That's amazing.
And the community existed 100 years. After 100 years, everybody came to Lisbon and disappeared. But they had 2 synagogues in the Algarve. And this was the Sequeira family. Was a lot of people.
Do the synagogues still exist? Do they still?
Was one synagogue Sequeira, the other was Amram. The name was called Amram. And there is a Jewish cemetery for that period from 1832 to 1930. Therefore, it's.
And can I ask, isn't it very difficult for you walking in the streets of Lisbon thinking that in the Ministry of Justice they promulgated the Inquisition and they had the autofair not far from here?
There are many Catholics, and Saturday I met a gentleman I never met before. They realize they are descendants from Jews, because many, or what they call the new Christians, were obliged to practice the religion, but in his intimate soul, they feel they are Jews, and now they are perfect Catholics. But I'm sure I am of Jewish origin.
Did any of them want to return?
There was a lady in the synagogue who is a prosecutor. She's a prosecutor. She's not Jewish. She comes every service.
When she comes to the synagogue?
She wants to become Jewish. There is a doctor, a lady, very for assisted fertility. She wants to become Jewish. Many people want to become Jewish. And many Anusim, who became officially Jews, went to Israel.
Many went to Israel, many.
There are shochatim, agronomists, they went to Israel.
We have, in South Africa, there were families and instances where they also felt that their name, because there were quite a few who came to the colonies, to Angola, to Mozambique, and from Madeira, there were quite a few from Madeira.
Yes.
So there's the name, one of the names, Donobriga.
Look, one day I went with my wife. My wife was not Jewish. She converted to Judaism. She was a good Jewish woman. She used to say if there was not a Shabbat, we had to invent it. But one day I went to Curaçao, where there is a Portuguese, very old community. The synagogue is from 1732. And the president of the community, his family name is Gomes. It's a Portuguese name. He said, but I am Gomes with S, not Z. Z is Spanish. I'm Portuguese. And when I say Jew from Portugal, oh, fantastic. What is your name? Samuel Levy. He was completely deceived. He was looking for a name, really Portuguese name. And my wife said, I am Mendes and Souza Costa.
So Mendes could have been...
My wife believed she was also Jewish from origin. He said, you, yes, okay, you are Jewish. I was not Jewish. Samuel Levy doesn't mean anything for them.
And Samuel, your name Levy, it's a tradition, obviously, with the name Levy that you were living in.
I cannot hide that I'm a Jew.
But also Levy.
But you know,
also from
I was
the
educated.
tribe of Levy.
I always lived in a country where you are a Jew among 300 Catholics or 400 in university. I have my best friends are Catholic. I don't have Jewish friends. I have many, but I was in a wedding on Saturday of a granddaughter of a friend of mine who know him. I know him for 70 years. He made the university with me. He made the army with me. We worked in the same company for a lot of years. He is like my brother, but he's a goy. In the beginning, we had a big struggle about the religions, and now when he was in the wedding, he introduced me. He's a Jew, but he's my friend. All these things.
And you got on very well. There's no.
His son was telling jokes about Jews. I was not present. When I arrived, we were talking, telling jokes about Jews. You said, please go ahead. I want to hear them. We are the first ones to tell jokes.
Yeah.
There is a story, I don't know if you heard, it's very, very well known, that a rabbi was having dinner with a bishop, and the bishop was eating pork. Said to Rabbi, please take one, it's very good. No, I can't. Why you can't? No, my religion doesn't allow them. You don't know what you lose. At the end of the lunch, the rabbi said, goodbye, Mr. Bishop, it was very interesting to be with you. My best regards to your wife. I cannot marry. My religion doesn't allow. You don't know what you lose. But one day happened to me. I went to a seminar, inter-religion seminar, in a place in Portugal. And before the seminar, the Catholic representative was the bishop, archbishop of that place. And we had lunch in front of each other. And he was eating meat. He said to me, do you want meat? I said, no, thank you very much. I was so much tempted to tell him
the story, wow.
But I didn't.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much. I cannot eat that. I was eating fish, and that's what.
It's amazing.
I have used to live in the army. I was the only Jew. In the university, I was the only Jew. All the time in the job, in the company with 12,000 people, I was.
And you never felt anti-Semitism, personal. You never felt anti-Jewish feeling or anti-Semitism.
No, there are some jokes which. My boss used to say, you should be a good marketer because you are Jewish. No, I'm not a good marketer. The Jews are good to sell.
But being Jewish, it didn't hinder your progression in any job or any...
The thing I felt in my life is that being Jew, we cannot make wrong things, and we have to be good when we study. In our profession, we have to be very good, because if you are not very good, first thing they tell you it's not Samuel Levy is bad, is you are Jew. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I had to defend the reputation of a Jew, and I think all the Jews are good in their activities because they have the challenge of the Goyim saying, well, they're Jewish. We cannot give them space to that. Another one, for example, I had one day a professor in university fixed an exam on Shabbat. And I said, I cannot do it. I cannot change. And I will lose. And I went to the director of the faculty, and he spoke with the professors, he didn't. Then I went to the dean of the university, who was my cousin, was the president of the community. was a big authority and said, look, I went there not because it was my cousin, because I went up in the line. He called the professor and he said, look, you have to allow him to make the exam another day, because there is a law, 1935, where the Minister of Education, he knew everything. And he said, okay, tell him to come tomorrow. I had to be prepared. If I was not prepared, said, you see, why did I? He made me this to
make it more difficult.
Bad, and he gave me a very difficult exam. But I had the next day I had to do it.
And what subject was the exam on? What were you studying?
Excuse me?
What were you studying?
Economics.
Economics. It was at the university here in Lisbon.
Yes, economy. And management, economy and management.
Well, I'll tell you, I was very lucky. On my personal side, I went with a kippah for my interview for dental school, and they accepted me.
No, here.
And if there was an exam on a Yontif, Pesach, or even the last days of Pesach, or
South Africa is
they would change it just for me. They
you
changed
have
it.
My family always had the mezuzah inside the house.
Yeah, and in South Africa it's outside.
But you should have the mezuzah outside.
Yeah.
But I went an American to visit a friend of mine, and all the floor had mezuzot outside. I had the mezuzot inside the house, because we did not want to show very much the low profile.
Yeah, low profile.
We have to follow low profile. Inquisition 300 years was a lot of time. You have a dictionary of Portuguese the name Jewish. There are 29 meanings of the word Jewish or Jew. Out of the 29, 22 are pejorative. I don't know if you can say it in English. It's a bad thing. Jew is a bad thing.
22 out of the 29.
One day I was in a business meeting with the top people.
Is it still like that today? It's still.
When I was when I was working in my company one day, the big boss said, "Oh, he is a Jew," and I excuse me, because he was saying that you Jew, he was somebody. It's 300 years of Inquisition. They made a lot of Catholics.
You know what the tragedy, the irony?
Which is they have the Jewish blood.
The irony is that Jesus himself was Jewish. That is the irony of history. It's the most amazing irony of history.
There are two feelings. One is that they are jealous of the Jews. Because Jews are good, they have noble prices, they are always very competent because they are very rich. Therefore, they are jealous of the Jews.
But not always rich. In Poland and in Lithuania, they weren't so rich. They weren't rich at all. There were many...
It's the same thing, no?
Very poor Jews. In Israel today, there are many poor Jews. But
Lithuania was anti-Semitic.
Very. To this very day, it's very sad. We were there 3 months ago. On the steps of the Protestant church in Vilna, they've used the tombstones, and you see Hebrew engraved in the steps that they use for the church.
That's why the Jews are challenged.
It's unbelievable. It's something
that's maybe
hard to
comprehend. Good because they are challenged.
They are challenged.
Would they be accepted by everybody? Maybe they would not be so good.
But I think in Portugal, it's quite amazing that they allowed the refugees to come and gave them shelter. And if not for
the Syrian.
No, in Portugal during the war.
Yes. In Spain was very a big problem.
It was amazing that Portugal, and I think during 1973 when they had the Yom Kippur War, and America had to airlift arms to Israel in 1973, Portugal allowed America to use the Azores to refuel.
The real story of that event that they did not want to give to the American the possibility
permission.
to land, and the American made a very strong threatening to Portugal. I don't remember what they said, that if you don't do that, something, and they accepted.
But Portugal.
But it was not the generosity of the Portuguese
It wasn't.
government.
But I think Portugal, it was the one of the only countries in Europe that allowed.
Yes.
The other European countries wouldn't allow.
They did not recognize Israel for a long time,
But
and the excuse they gave is that they had a colony, Guinea, where there were many Muslims. You see what UNESCO is doing now. They don't recognize.
They don't recognize the Kotel or the Harabite.
A lot of people abstain from voting against. It's amazing. The lot of people who vote in favor, of course, the Arabs. Then 4 or 5 countries, Portugal, France, England, America, and so on. But then 20 or 30 abstained.
I know.
It's a shame. It's a shame.
It is a shame.
UNESCO
It's terrible.
is. I hope that I don't know if Antonio Guterres can change anything. The new
But he's
Portuguese Secretary General.
General. He seems to be
I
a
don't
good
know.
man.
He cannot change some votes from the Commission. UNESCO was always anti-Semitic. Always.
It's incredible to say that the Harabite, the temple, and the Western Wall, the Kotel, is devoid of Jewish history. It's impossible to understand.
The United Nations accused Israel 67 times, the Human Rights Commission, 67, which is more than all the other accusations.
It was
they
more
made to
than all the
country.
resolutions.
A country where crimes are committed every day. But no accusation. Only Israel, 67 in the last years.
But the relations between Portugal and Israel today, it's improved.
Good, yes,
it's
they
good.
are good. Not very developed, but certain relation. And, they have good relation. In the Portuguese Parliament, there is a commission about Israel that participate in many things. No, the people with a certain culture recognize the merits of Israel.
Very good. And can I ask, looking back on your life here in Lisbon, if you look back on your life, you're very happy, or you feel that you had a good life being born and raised in Lisbon, and I mean you achieved amazing.
Very much. The Portuguese are very nice people. Well, I was grown up in this ambience, because when I lived in Switzerland are awful people, awful.
It's not as warm. It's not as warm.
Efficiency, fantastic. Portuguese for efficiency are not good, but the Swiss are fantastic. And I left the country to Switzerland when they had the revolution, and the revolution here was the chaos. And then I decided I couldn't work here. I went to Switzerland, and I was working for a big Portuguese group, industrial group, where I was top manager for a big division. I had 1,800 people under me. And when the revolution came, I said, my boss, I'm going to leave your company. I don't want to stay here anymore. He said, why don't we join us in Switzerland? And I went to Switzerland with them. They invited me to go, and I established companies for them in Brazil and Switzerland. After 3 years, I went to work for another company, but the Swiss work, my Swiss work was accomplished in a good way, because my clients, my suppliers, were not Swiss, were all over the world, and I was all the time traveling. And I used to come to Portugal, no problem. But if you have to live in Switzerland for Swiss people, they're awful, very stuff.
It's different. I must just tell you what I saw today. We were so blessed to be here for Sukkot, and we felt the warmth the
And
community,
the Portuguese
the
is
warmth.
warm.
It's very inviting, very
You ask-
hospitable.
if you see a guy coming this way in the street, you ask him a question, where is he is able to go back to show to you where you have
So
to go.
we asked today when we were walking in the town, we asked people directions. Everybody was so helpful. But what I found and my wife found absolutely phenomenal. We came into the show, people asked immediately, where you from? It's so nice to have you here, welcoming. When you come into the show, today I was sitting next to an American and he said he feels so at home here. And I think it's such a blessing that the shul that your family helped establish has, for me personally and for everybody that I met in shul, without exception, you've made it into not only a Beit Knesset, but a bayit, that we all feel at home, that we could come and daven, we could do the lulav and the etrog, we could do the mitzvah sitting in the sukkah. You made us feel part of your shul, part of your community. It's a blessing. We really felt
But
so accepted.
It's Jewish,
it's beautiful.
but it's Portuguese as well.
But you've combined both elements, and
Yes.
I can just say how grateful everybody, all the visitors, and there were many visitors in the show, everybody felt, there's a word, a Yiddish word, heimish. It was so, we felt so part
This
of it.
is why many retired people, mainly British, for many years they come retire to Portugal.
It's wonderful.
First because the pound was strong, now it's not the case, but people like
It's
the human relation.
It's wonderful. But you can be you can look back on your life and your family's life, and you can feel very privileged. It's a big honor what your family established here in Lisbon, and what building of the shul. I'm sure it must have been very difficult, but they succeeded in creating such a magnificent. I mean, the history behind the shul. It's unbelievable, and I went to the back of the shul and I've seen all the old sforim. It's really it's magnificent, and may it just continue to just encourage more people to come back to their roots and do mitzvot, and may you have all of Hashem's blessings. But I really, from the bottom of my heart and my wife as well, we felt so at home here, and it's not in every community you do.
Felt that.
People were warm with open hearts, and it's a lot. If it wasn't for your family, maybe there wouldn't have been the shul. Yes. We wouldn't have had a place to go. So you can feel very, very, very pleased and honored of the very special.
It has been always like that.
And can I ask this? Can we look at this magnificent ketuvah?
Yes.
This is a ketuvah of your parents.
Yes. Shlomo Levy.
What a beautiful ketuvah this is.
My mother is Esther.
And how old is it, the ketuvah?
This they married in 1909.
Wow.
It
This is the original ketuvah.
107 years.
And where were they married?
In Gibraltar.
In Gibraltar.
Excuse me, I have to. I can be in a minute.
We've just come out of the first day of Sukkot, and I'm here with Samuel Levy in Lisbon, in Portugal, a very young,
87 years old.
87 years young, Mr. Samuel Levy from Lisboa, from Lisbon in Portugal, and we are very honored and privileged to be doing this interview of a fascinating story, basically witnessing history of the Levy family and the contribution to Portuguese Jewry in modern day Portugal after the Inquisition after the Inquisition and the return of the Levy family to Portugal. We're going to hear about the story, the fascinating story, how the Levy family contributed to the re-emergence and of the Jewish community here in Lisbon in Portugal. And I thank you so much for the time and to be in your home and for this interview.
Thank you.
This is one of the the books that your grandfather wrote?
This was the first one, Yeshua. His name was Yeshua.
The Yeshua. And this was published in Jerusalem.
Excuse me?
This was published in Jerusalem.
Then we have the other one he published. Isa Hashem. I don't know if this one. It's not this one, it's the same. This is Isa Hashem. Because he had a son Yitzhak, another Shlomo, another Abraham.
Isha Hashem. And he gave commentaries on Tanakh.
And not only the Tanakh, the whole Bible. We have the prophecy also. And that was Orach Chaim, was the last one he did. He wrote also in Spanish. Orach Chaim. Oh no, it's not this one. Otzar Chaim.
Otzar Chaim. This must give you a tremendous amount of...
Excuse me?
It's incredible to think that this is what your grandfather...
Yes.
And these are learnt in yeshivot in Israel?
We have the edition. The edition, did you take?
We took.
Here is the edition. Now in 1949...
When were these published?
These are the first one was published, was printed and during the life of my grandfather in 1890 maybe. The other ones were published after his, he was deceased by my grandmother around 1910, 1914. And this is the new edition. Some people decided to make in Jerusalem in 1994.
These are the new. So the previous ones were. These are the original previous.
Yes. They reprinted.
And these are
but
reprinted.
Organized in a different way. For example, here you have comments in Bereshit, then Shemot Vaikra, for example. In the other book they have Bereshit, Shemot Vaikra, and in these books they've made all the Bereshit comments, and then all the Shemot. It's 1994.
94.
It's very cheap, this book, but it's published in Jerusalem. Because they found it was very good for the teaching in the yeshivot.
So these books are being taught today in Jerusalem, in Israel?
That's why they decided to publish it again.
Wow. What a
100 years later.
What a skut. What an honor. What a tremendous honor.
And they have here, you see, it's a very...
And how many? There's 5 volumes.
Excuse me?
They did for each volume of the Torah.
No, they have the same content of the other books, but organized in a different way. For example, here. This one is Hidushim al-Rov Masketot. Here, Hidushim al-Nevim. For example, this is
Nevi'im. Wow.
And this is all on the Torah. This one is comments on the Torah.
And it's on Nevi'im.
They organized differently.
Does your Zayda quote the Abravanel? Because he also did commentaries on Tanakh.
Abravanel, this was a funny thing. When there was the 500 years he died, they published in Portuguese translation of the book made by Ben-Sion Netanyahu.
The father of
It's not Ben-Sion Netanyahu was the father of
Bibi
the
Netanyahu.
prime minister. He was a professor and he wrote a book about Bravanel. He published in 1952 or 53. He had several editions until 1995 or 94. The fifth edition was translated to Portuguese to be published in 2008. And they asked me to write the introduction to the book, and I wrote. But the book didn't appear. And I said, what happened? Oh, there was no money, we could not publish. And 5 years later, an organization subsidized the book, and it was published.
Do you have the book? A copy of the book?
Yes, I have the book.
Don Isaac Abravanel by Ben-Sion Netanyahu. This is in Portuguese.
Portuguese. And here's the introduction I wrote.
Samuel Levy. Wow, this is wonderful. And this is, did they make a translation in English?
Excuse me?
Is there a translation in English or just Portuguese?
It's only Portuguese.
Portuguese.
Content is English is.
It's wonderful. What a kavod. And deserving, that's wonderful. That is really Don Isaac Abravanel. Wow, that is fantastic. The biggest shakoyach. And this book, did it sell well? They made a lot of copies?
Think it's you cannot find anymore.
The whole printing was...
Yeah, it's sold out. I understand the publisher told me it's sold out.
Fantastic.
University of Holland, excuse me. Professor Salomon is a friend of mine.
And what was the...
Professor of the University of New York, Albany. He's a professor specialized in the Portuguese Inquisition and things so on.
And this was his thesis?
Excuse me?
Is this the thesis?
This is his thesis that he presented in his doctorate in Holland. He's Dutch, but he teaches in University of New York.
And the subject is on the...
Lady Moses, Saul Levy Morter on the Hacham. He is publishing the treaty written by Saul Levy Morter with comments by Professor Herman Prince Salomon. But this is the treaty of Saul Levy Morter, the treaty of the truth of the law of Moses' law in Portuguese.
In Portuguese.
And this was written in Amsterdam, 1659, 1660.
And this was originally by Portuguese that went to Amsterdam?
It was published by Professor Herman Prince Salomon by the university.
Because a lot of Portuguese went to Amsterdam after the Inquisition.
There was very famous Portuguese. You can get this a moment.
How did you get this magnificent...
The author is Mrs. Matilda Snee.
And she gave it to the Israeli...
She painted for me. She lives in Jerusalem.
And was she connected with the Israeli embassy?
She was working in the embassy here in Lisbon.
And it's on Portuguese tiles. These are Portuguese ceramic?
Yes, she met here in Portugal.
That's beautiful. And this is unique. I've never seen this before.
Excuse me?
It's a unique. It's the only one.
Yes, yes.
It's
Unique, of course.
It's very beautiful.
But the cocktail many years ago.
Yeah.